over 3 years now. Imagine in your small business, or imagine in your own family budget, or in your own household, if you didn't pass a family budget, if you didn't know how much you were bringing in and how much you were spending, you'd wind up in some pretty bad fiscal positions, wouldn't you? Well, that's what's happened to America. And it's why I am the only candidate in this race that supports something called no budget, no pay. Just like in the real world, if you don't do your job and Congress doesn't get its work done and pass a budget, then members of Congress shouldn't be paid. It's that simple. Now I know that in an election like this, and as you watch television every single day, we're always being told what divides us in our country. And what I can tell you is that this election that we're facing in November, just 53 or 54 days from now, this election is not about Republican or Democrat. This election is about one thing. It's about math. We cannot keep spending $1 trillion more a year than we're bringing in. We have been doing it for so long now that we have $16 trillion in debt. And I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. It's been Republicans that have done it, and it's been Democrats that have done it. But this isn't a time for us to look in the rearview mirror and point fingers and place blame. I think you're just like me. You're sick and tired of the name calling. That's not going to solve our problems. Scare tactics are not going to get our budget back in the right direction. And so what I would tell you is that the $16 trillion debt that we're going to pass on to future generations, it's not just a problem for them in the future, it's a problem today. It's stifling economic growth. The uncertainty that it creates is hurting business in our country. The anemic growth that we're seeing right now in our country is partly due to that. The other factor is, and you're seeing this as well, our $16 trillion national debt has become our nation's greatest national security threat. When you're borrowing nearly 40 cents of every dollar, and some of it from countries that don't share your values and your interests, you can't act in your own best national security interests. You can't take a leadership role around the world like America always has, and when the world has always been a better place when we've done it. Now, I can tell you, and I'm sure you know this, I've been giving speeches a lot as I've been traveling around, and the $16 trillion number kind of just rolls off of my tongue a little bit too easy. So let me just pause for a second and bring this number down to a number that's a lot more manageable for me and hopefully is a lot more manageable for you. Imagine a family that makes $52,000 a year. That's their income. And that same family has $75,000 in expenses. They've been putting 30% or more of everything they spend on a credit card. And they've been doing it for so long that they've racked up $325,000 in credit card debt. They don't own a home, and they don't have any assets. Now I'm going to ask my banker friends over here, at what point would you tell that family that you're going to stop lending them money, or you're no longer going to ever increase their credit limit, or if you do, you're going to raise their interest rates because those loans have become too risky? That's where we are as a country right now. And so there are only two things that we need to do and that we need to focus on in Washington, because everything else is going to be secondary. We have got to focus on getting our nation's fiscal house in order, and we have to focus on getting our economy moving again. And I know people want to make this very complicated. I know people want to make this very complex, but it's actually pretty straightforward what we need to do. We need to have a tax and regulatory system that provides certainty for small businesses so that they know what the environment's going to look like in the next year and into the future, so they can make decisions to invest in new equipment, invest in new infrastructure, to hire, to be able to expand and bring on new employees. So we need to reform our tax code, lower rates, eliminate exemptions, lowering the rates and broadening the base. It's critical that we have that. We now have the highest corporate tax rate in the industrialized world. It's making America less competitive every single day. There's already enough competition out there for us. The next thing we need to do is we need to be able to have the right-sized regulations. We can do it in the same way of still protecting the environment, still protecting consumers, but not having so much red tape and not having so much bureaucracy, not having the types of stifling effects that many of these regulations are having, that it takes either at the local level or the state level or the federal level to be able to create a business or open a business or hire new employees, the cost and compliance. I know I met the gentleman who runs the HR business and the payroll, and the fact that you're helping so many small businesses try to fight their way through the maze of all of the federal regulations and the amount of cost that it puts onto their shoulders and burdens them. And then finally, there's one other key component of getting our economy going again, and that's making sure that we have an energy policy for more onshore and offshore oil and natural gas exploration so that we are not sending more money overseas. And I can tell you this, we can do it. We can do it in a way that is efficient and effective and environmentally responsible. And it's something that was mentioned during my introduction, where I fought to save our coastal waters and reefs from the ocean outfall and the pumping of sewage into the Atlantic, but also too protecting and preserving Florida's natural pristine ecosystems like the Everglades. And so we can do this responsibly. We can do this in a way that we can balance between the need for cost-effective and affordable energy and balancing it with the environment. And so let me just close up and take a few questions, but let me just share with you this, because there are some Republicans in the room, there are some Democrats in the room, and I'm sure there's folks somewhere in between. And every single day I have the privilege and honor of traveling around and speaking to hundreds, if not thousands of people a week. And one thing we're constantly being told on television and the talking heads is what divides us. We're constantly being told about why one side or the other. We're constantly being told the things that are tearing our country apart. But what I get to hear, what I get to listen to, what I get to see every single day is what unites us, what brings us together, and that's this. We all want to make sure that our children and our grandkids and future generations have better opportunities than we had. That's the story of America. To be able to pass on a family business, to be able to make sure that your child can exceed the goals that you set for them or that they set for themselves. And that's really what November's election is all about. I know my story. My parents were public school teachers, and they had $31 to their name when I was born. My dad took risks and moved to Florida to go into the construction business. I know the sacrifices and the challenges that they overcame. And I know it because I get to talk to each and every one of you and hear your stories about what your parents did so that you could achieve the successes and pursue your passions and your dreams, and what you're doing now for your children so that they can be able to go on and get an education and start a family and open a business. That's what's at stake here in our country in 2012. That's what's at stake here in the next 54 days. And so as I campaign in the coastal communities from West Palm Beach to Fort Lauderdale, I hope to have the opportunity to earn your vote and support on November 6th, and I certainly hope to have the opportunity to serve as your next member of the United States House of Representatives so that together we can get America back on the move again. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here. Lane, do you want to just take some questions? Yeah. I'd be more than glad to. 3 at a time. Go up, make some very difficult decisions, and be able to come back home and live under the same rules as everybody else and live under the laws that I advocate for. So I think that's why 8 years was enough in Tallahassee for me, and I certainly think it would be enough in Washington. And in addition to being a supporter of term limits, I think my wife's a bigger supporter of term limits.
I don't think people in Congress understand how difficult it is to get health insurance. Whether you're a supporter of what was voted in the Affordable Health Care Act or not, I don't think they have a clue as to how hard it is. And how would you feel about having Congress take it off whatever health care program they get from the government and have to go out and buy their own health insurance? I think if they did that, they'd solve the health care problem in this country in about 5 minutes.
Well, it's actually pretty interesting. First, let me tell you that one of the first jobs I had after I graduated law school was actually selling group health insurance for 18 months, knocking on doors. I know people read a little bit about my bio. I like to remind people that I grew up in a family, both my parents, in addition to being public school teachers in the New York City public school system, were also both liberal Democrats. So it was a tough conversation telling my mom that I was going to register as a Republican when I turned 18. But what was tougher was that after I graduated from law school, I told her I wasn't going to be a lawyer. But I learned a lot about I learned a lot about the difficulties of access to health insurance during that time, and seeing it in small business, seeing it myself, and talking to folks every single day. Let me just share with you one thing, though, because members of Congress have a very unique system, and the system is this. They receive a premium support payment. That premium support payment then allows them to go into the marketplace and then purchase any health insurance plan out of the selected ones that are approved by the federal government and federal employees. So what I would tell you is I think that the health insurance access that members of Congress have access to, it isn't nearly as much of a problem as the pensions that members of Congress have access to, because it's the retirement plan and that defined benefit plan that's the problem. It's not as much about the premium support plan, and I think premium support now is a big issue of contention, but I think it's really the best way to create competition and choice in the marketplace. And so while I'm talking about this, let me bring up three really quick things that I think are critical to be able to address the healthcare crisis that we face in this country. Because if you believe, well, I'll say it this way, I don't believe that the law that is now currently the law was the best way to do what it was intended to do, which was increase access or control costs. I think there are better ways to do that. In order to do that, you've got to change the tax code so that people have the ability to get health insurance without the tax benefits that you currently get because of getting it through your employer. Second, you have to change the regulatory environment so people can do things like purchase health insurance across state lines. Third, you have to have cost transparency, because right now we have a third-party payer system, whether it's the government or whether it's your employer. You don't know what you're actually paying because the costs don't actually ever get to you as the consumer, and it's so different than what it is in any other marketplace that's out there. And so I think that with some real free market common sense reforms, we actually can address the issues of access and affordability without a government takeover, without going in the direction of a single payer nationalized healthcare system, which many are advocating for now. So I do believe there are some access or some opportunities for that, and I hope to have the opportunity to have that debate. Maybe one last question before Dave? Okay, Mayor, all you.
Are you going to have a plan like the book you had for the state of Florida for maintaining its stage 32?
Dave, I think you're referring. I think you're referring to the ideas for Florida's future.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing, and I referenced it earlier.
You're going to have to explain it. They don't let
It was Senator Marco Rubio at the time when he was the Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives and I was the Majority Leader, created a agenda for Florida, and it was 100 different legislative initiatives and items. And we worked in the Florida House of Representatives to actually pass an overwhelming majority of those items. Let me tell you what's happened in politics in the last few years, and Republicans and Democrats are both guilty of it. The minute somebody puts a plan on the table, the other side attacks. Because it's a lot easier to score political points by attacking your opponent's specific plans than it is to put your own plan on the table. Democrats are doing it to the Republicans on the bipartisan plan to save and strengthen Medicare for today and future generations. Republicans have done it to Democrats on the issue of federal health care, because I think Republicans, unlike myself, have done a poor job of talking about specifics. When we've reached a point in our country where it's more important to win an election than it is to solve a problem, that's why we are where we are. And so what I've said in this election, and I hope we can keep it this way for the next 50 plus days, is let's stop with the name calling, let's stop with the scare tactics, and let's have a real honest debate about the issues and the real differences that I have with Lois Frankel. I'm ready for that debate. I'm ready to talk about the fact that I believe in reforming the tax code. She believes in increasing taxes on small businesses. I believe in domestic energy. She opposes projects like the Keystone Pipeline. I believe in free market reforms to healthcare. She believes in a government-run, nationalized, single-payer healthcare system. Let's have that debate. Let's talk about specifics rather than having a finger-pointing, name-calling competition. And so when you do put items on the table like that, Dave, you're susceptible to those attacks. And I know I make myself susceptible to those attacks when I talk about specific things that I support. But I think, and I'll close with this, I think the challenges that we face right now as a country are so great that if we do not address them, and as I said, in short order, then I think we are going to experience a future that is going to be far different than the one that we are currently envisioning. And the one thing that I know from all of my study of history and from having the conversation to meet hundreds of people, thousands probably, who have come here from other countries and have now been part of the American experience is this: every time America has been tested, every time we have been challenged, every time we have faced adversity, we've had a generation that has answered the call throughout our history. I believe 2012 is yet another one of those moments that we're going to look back on 5 years from now, 25 years from now. And I want to be part of that generation that helps answer the call and put America back on the right track again. So thank you all again for the opportunity to be here. Thank you. Hope to earn your support.